Assembled company, welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe. And it is that every other Sunday. And every other Sunday we have hosted by the amazing Mike Russ from Get a Word in Edgeways, our worldwide story round. So without further ado, and without me rattling along for the next hour and a half, over to you, Mike.
Thank you very much and welcome to everybody. I see we've got people coming in from all over the world, but I want to just, because we've got Mike here, who's a thoroughly important person. Have you got a few minutes just to give us an update on the chances of the festival in Marrakech, Mike, and what your thoughts are on how it's going to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've obviously been planning for the festival for a long time. John was out there for a fortnight, John, I forget, 2 or 3 weeks in November. We've got a lot of logistics in place. We've got more than 20 local hotels hosting storytellers. We had a very detailed information file which went into the local authorities this week, actually, or the end of last week, which we've got some quite a few logistical things like road closures and access to public spaces and things. So that's all coming along well. So we're proceeding very much on the basis that the festival will happen. At the moment, Morocco's borders are closed for the protection of the Moroccans, I have to say, because they've got very low COVID rates relative to other places. If, as we anticipate, borders are reopened, then we'll run the whole festival as planned. If we have to run if borders are open for some countries, and I think it's most likely that they would open for North America and other African countries and Asia, given that COVID rates are very high in some parts of Europe. If we're in a hybrid situation, I think we're very well placed to do that, and I think we can do it very well. And in the event that borders are closed, or actually probably a bigger issue would be if Morocco brought in restrictions on gatherings, because it's very important that we get lots of, that we have our local audience there. So if there are restrictions on gatherings that make it necessary, then we would just go online. So the festival is 100% happening. We're equally capable of doing our in-person large gathering or our online festival or some sort of a hybrid, and we're really planning on all of those bases, and we'll be. It's going to be very last minute when we make a judgment, inevitably. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes perfect sense, and thank you for the update. I'm thoroughly looking forward to it, and I'm sure we are, and I'm sure we'd all like to say thank you very much, Mike, for all the work that you and John are putting in, because this wouldn't have happened without you.
Thank you. We're living it.
I just know how really difficult and long, and I've got 4 Zoom meetings tomorrow, for instance. And I know how much work you're putting into it, and I know you're probably not getting paid a penny for it. And I'd just like to say, on behalf of everybody, thank you very much.
Well, no, that's very kind. I mean, we're really, really excited about the new storytelling centre in Marrakech. So we've been building that throughout over the duration of the last 2 years, really. And we've been posting sort of pictures, which I know a lot of you have seen and given nice comments on. We actually got our completion certificate on the building about 10 days ago. So we're, the inspections that we're sort of safe and legal to occupy, and we can insure it and that sort of thing. So we really are ever so excited to open the storytelling centre. That's going to be fantastic. And of course that was designed from the outset as a multi-media space, so to mix an online audience with a physical audience. So it will be, if we do find ourselves running a hybrid festival, it'll be perfect for it. So yeah, all very good. And John, I don't know if you want to say a word or two at that point.
No, I think you pretty well covered it. I mean, the exciting bit for me is just how much the Moroccans have actually taken it on board. I mean, it was definitely not a wasted 10 days there. I've never shaken so many hands in my life.
Yeah.
But Zuhair he's actually taken it and run and just done an enormous amount of work since I was out there. And he's been linking up with Mike and linking up with all the Moroccan intellectual establishment. So it's we're still incredibly optimistic. I think, Mike.
Yeah,
it's fair enough to say, isn't it?
It is. I mean,
Right.
Has
anybody got any questions they want to ask Mike or John? Otherwise, I'm going to kick off with the story. So, but I'd just like to say one thing, Mike. I start a series of meetings this month with there's in my little town here in Shropshire called Much Wenlock. There's an old Barclays bank it's on the high street, and it's now, of course, not a bank anymore because they've gone online and everything else. And we're looking to start the English Storytelling Centre to see if it's feasible to be there. And we're going to call it a bank of stories.
Good luck.
and if you've got some savings, Mike, like a couple of £1 million, I would be down to come and visit you.
I think running one arts venue is ambitious enough for us at the moment.
Anyway, I'll keep you all informed with how that's going. So, right. Of course, it's the same as always, and we're 10 minutes in, so we'll get started. If everybody can mute themselves if you're not telling the story, apart from me, and then I can see Colin, right, that's fine. I'm going to go to Rona first, then I'm going to go, no, is Jasmine here? Who's in India? Is anybody here from India?
Just Nama down here.
Nama's there.
I'm here.
Yeah, she's here.
Oh, Jasmine. Right, there you are, Jasmine. So if you can go second. So we're going to go.
I'll go second.
Right. We can't see you, Jasmine, but Mona, we're going to go first, then Jasmine second. Okay. We'll take it from there. Despina, you're third.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Great to see some of the familiar faces that I have regularly on Kayleigh. Great to see you here tonight. And I'd like to share this story with you. I'm almost certain you will have heard it before because it's quite an old story. And I first heard it years ago, probably at Fate or somewhere, I don't know. But I'm just going to tell you my version of this story now. The young woman was, you couldn't take your eyes off her because she just had a presence about her. Apart from the fact that she was beautiful, she was so confident. And one of the strange things about this young woman was that she knew everybody and everybody knew her. Now, that wouldn't have been particularly odd if she lived in a village, but she lived in a town where there was a couple of thousand people. But the reason she knew everybody was because when anybody came to the marketplace, she was there and she would speak to them. And she would tell them of her dream, that one day her knight in shining armor was going to come and sweep her off her feet. He was going to have to be handsome and, wealthy and kind and everything that a young woman would want in the man that she was going to share her life with. It had never appeared. I mean, there hadn't even been anybody that came close to fitting that bill, but she never stopped thinking about it and would tell everybody that that was her dream. And she said, I'm entitled to have that dream and I'm entitled for it to become true because I am such a good person. And as you could do back in those days, she opened her shirt and peeled back her skin and exposed her heart. See, she said, it's perfect. Not a blemish, not a black mark on my heart. I've never done anyone any harm. Well, the old storyteller had heard this countless times, and she wondered if this young girl was ever going to wake up and stop dreaming, because she had no idea what life was about. And one day, she just got irritated, she got frustrated. And she spoke to the young girl and she said, I've watched you over time, and it's been a couple of years now where you, bravely expose your heart and show it to all and sundry. and you call it the perfect heart. But my dear, I'll show you a perfect heart. And this old storyteller, who was very old and wizened and grey and wrinkly, opened her cloak and opened her shirt and pulled back her skin, exposing her heart, while the young woman leapt back. Ugh! Oh, oh, that looks terrible. Oh, it's all cut and bruised and there's holes in it. Oh, my word. That heart is dreadful. And the old storyteller said, no, my dear, the whole point of having a heart is that you share it. You give everybody that needs it a piece of your heart. And with any luck, they'll give you a piece back. It might not fit, so you might have to squeeze it in, and you might have a bit uneven here or there. You might have to add a stitch or two to hold it in. The young girl couldn't believe what she was hearing. But no, that doesn't make sense. Oh no. I mean, you know, why have you ended up with your heart all broken? And she said, I've just told you. I give pieces of it away. But if I gave you or anybody else a piece of my heart, it wouldn't look as beautiful anymore. It wouldn't be perfect. And the old storyteller said, that's right, it wouldn't, but it would be serving its purpose. This young girl obviously wasn't very bright. It had to be explained to her again that for a heart to do its job, it had to be given away and then given back. But if I give a piece of my heart away and I don't get anything back, and the old storyteller said, that's very unlikely to happen because people will see a different you. If you've decided to share your heart, word will get around and people will be happy to share their heart with you. Really? So I can, but if somebody gives me, I don't understand. Why doesn't anybody give me a piece of their heart now? And the old storyteller looked at her and she said, my dear, where would it go? Where?
Thank you very much, Rona. That's a lovely story, well told again. Now, Jasmine, are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Right. Good. You're going to tell us a story?
I go to third because I'm facing some network issues, so I'm trying to resolve.
Okay. So, we'll go to Despina. And then after then, it's Keith and then Simona. Okay. Despina, there you go. Okay. And can you mute yourself, Rona, please?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, did I miss something? I was away from
Yeah,
the
no,
gate.
just Jasmine is having some internet connection problems in India. So if you could go now and then Keith goes next. Okay, Keith?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so I would like to tell you the story of Daedalus today. You probably know the story of the great architect who, together with his son Icarus, flew away from King Minos' palace. And have you heard it?
We haven't
Yes.
heard your version.
Well, it's not like a different version. It's just that we are given chunks of stories, and I always like to find what's in between, what's missing. Yeah, like you connect pieces of the puzzle. So if I get a bit carried away, which I tend to do with Greek mythology, please notify me, give me some, I don't know, sign or something that I should get over with it. Yeah. Right. So before he went to King Minos' palace, Daedalus was a very famous architect in Athens. This is where he came from. And not only an architect, he was also a mathematician and he was a sculptor. Let's call him kind of Da Vinci of his era, right? They say he was the first who gave motion to statues. Up till then, they were like Kouros's statues, yeah? They had their hands very close to their bodies, and he was the first one who took the limbs away, yeah? Started giving them some motion. Okay, so he was very famous in Athens for his work, and he had a school and he had disciples, and he would teach them maths and design. And one of his best pupils was his sister's son, his nephew. Now, that little fellow, the young one, he was almost as good as his uncle. Daedalus, though famous he was, had trouble creating a new tool. He needed a tool, something that we don't know exactly what it is, but it looked like today's saw. So he was trying to make that, but he could not make one that lasted, that was tough enough for the job he wanted to use it for. And they say that his nephew, looking at a fish bone, had an idea, had a notion of how he could create said tool. And so he did. So he managed to make the tool that his master couldn't. And as we all know, even geniuses are pride people, yeah? And they're proud people, and pride is a bad thing. So he didn't take it very well that his nephew would outdo him like that. So he took the young one up to Acropolis. Others say they went up there to have a look at the view. Others say they went to Athena's temple to worship. We don't know exactly with what pretense he took him up there. There was nobody else up there. There was no eyewitness, but somehow the kid just fell. He fell off the cliff and he was killed. And even though it was not very clear, everybody suspected that it had been the uncle. So at the funeral, where his sister was wailing and crying over her lost son, she sort of accused him publicly that he was responsible for her son's death. And he left, embarrassed, obviously. And even though it could not be proven, rumor sometimes surfaces for a man to lose his position. So he would not get any more job orders, work orders. He was losing money and people were looking at him in a strange way. So he had to flee. And this is how he found his place in King Minos' palace. Yeah, he traveled all the way to Crete, which was the other very, very powerful kingdom of the era. So we'll leave Daedalus for a minute and go back to King Minos. Now, King Minos was not Cretan. He was a son of Zeus with Europe. Zeus had taken Europe to Crete, and there he had 3 sons with her, after which he abandoned them, like he usually did. And then the king of Crete took Europe to be his wife and adopted her 3 sons. So Minos was the oldest one, but when the king passed away, the people did not think very highly of King Minos because he was not blood related to their late king. So he had to somehow prove to them that he was God sent. So he made this deal, this pact with Poseidon. He had to sacrifice a very great white bull that Poseidon had provided to Poseidon. And Poseidon would prove that he was the chosen one to be their king. But when Poseidon produced the beast was so glorious that King Minos decided that he wanted to keep it and reproduce his cows with it and, produce a new super race of cattle. So he thought, not very clever of him, that he could outwit the god So he sacrificed another white bull instead. As we said, not a very clever thing to do, to try to outwit a god, yeah? So Poseidon's fury. He agreed with the goddess of love, Aphrodite, Venus. And together they made Pasiphae, King Minos' wife, fall in love with the beast. Pasiphae fell terribly in love with the bull. But the bull was an animal. He would not even look at a human being. So Pasiphae asked for the help of Daedalus. No, Daedalus was, okay, he was the king's architect, obviously, but of course he was inferior to all royal family, so he had to help out. He created this wooden statue, let's say, a hollow one, of a cow, and they put some pelts on top, and in the empty spot, there was a place left for Pasiphae to enter. So they put the cow in a field, supposedly it was grazing, and thus they could have intercourse with the bull. From this union came the Minotaur we all know about. So, since he had helped the queen do that, and he was part of, he was an accomplice, he had to help King Minos get rid of the beast somehow. Thus, they made the labyrinth. It was Daedalus' work. We all know the labyrinth where the beast was kept. And not only that, but they had this pact with the Athenians. Let's say they had won a war over the Athenians. So the Athenians would have to pay tax in money and blood to King Minos. So they would send once every 3 months a boat full of young people. There had to be 10 of them, and the tribute to pay to the king. And this was all fine and well until in one ship, Theseus boarded the ship. You know, Theseus was the son of the king of Athens, King Aeneas. And the ship sailed from Athens to Crete, and the daughter of King Minos and Pasiphae, Ariadne, saw this young lad who was the hero, right? And she immediately fell for him and did not want him. She did not want him to be lost, to be killed in the labyrinth, because he would either be killed by the beast or he would be lost forever in there. There were skeletons to prove it. So again, she, the princess this time, asked for Daedalus' help. He was the maker of the labyrinth after all, and he was the only one who could solve the riddle of how to get out. So he gave her the yarn. Daedalus gave Ariadne the yarn, which she gave to Theseus, so he would unravel it and he could follow it back and find his way out afterwards. So Theseus managed to slay the beast and leave along with the other Athenians, and taking Ariadne with him, they left the kingdom of King Minos, and it was another embarrassment, let's say, for such a powerful king. So this was twice a treason on behalf of Daedalus. After that, King Minos decided to punish Daedalus. In the meantime, he had fallen for a slave girl at the palace, and he had a son, Icarus, who lived with his father. So he imprisoned them. And while they were kept in this prison, the very intelligent Daedalus tried to think of a way to escape, of course. And what he did was that every night that slaves would brought them the candles of the day, he would keep the final beads And he would also gather feathers from the passing birds. And this way, he was able, after a long time, to produce 2 gigantic wings, both for himself and for his son. They tried them and they saw that they worked. And before they set off, he warned his son that he should not travel too low, not too close to water, because the wings would get wet and they would grow heavy, nor too high, because they were connected with wax, and of course the sun would melt it. But kids have a tendency to not listen to their parents, especially teenagers, as Icarus was at the time. So, of course, he got carried away while flying. He was so enthralled that he would fly very high, where the sun would start melting the wings, and then he would fly very low, where the wings would get heavy from the moisture of the sea. And finally, he could not navigate the wings any longer, and he fell. He fell in the sea, which is up to this day called the Icarian, Belagos, the Icarian Sea. Daedalus, devastated as he was from his son's death, he could do nothing to help him, so he carried on with the wings. And the winds took him all the way to Sicily. Imagine, now we're talking about what, 2000, before Common Era? So imagine a man come flying from the sky, landing. They must have taken him for a god or something. Anyway, he had such a great reputation all along Greece, which was not even one nation at the time, but an architect like that, an engineer, an inventor, everybody knew who he was. So of course, all the kings wanted him. And the king of Sicily took him in. In the meantime, back to Crete, King Minos found out that his prisoners had escaped, and Daedalus had all this secret knowledge. He knew family secrets and he knew state secrets. I mean, he knew things that if fallen to the wrong hands, if an enemy heard of this, the great kingdom, it would be the end of it. So he could not let him go. And part of it, of course, was a desire to get back at him. So he set off in pursuit. There is a lovely adventure there where he passes from kingdom to kingdom. He passes from Athens, he passes from Megara. There's a story of treason. He sets Megara to fire. And asking in different courts from king to king, he finally reaches Sicily. So every time he visited a kingdom, he would be taken in, given food, all the luxury that the king deserved, of course. It was a very powerful kingdom after all. And he would give the other king a riddle. So King Minos had this large seashell, like the spiral ones, a big one. And he asked them to pass a red thread from one end of the seashell and take it up the other end, which was, he had created a hole and you could take it out. So the king of Sicily, of course, decided to play clever. And he asked Daedalus, who was the only one who had the mindset to solve such riddles, if he could do it. Daedalus stood for a minute and then he put a little drop of honey on the little hole on top, and then put the red thread around the little ant and set it free at the beginning of the seashell. So the ant went all the way up the spiral until it reached the honey on the other end and took the thread out with it. Thus, both ends of the red thread in hand and the seashell in the middle, the king of Sicily showed King Minos how he had done it. Yeah. And of course, King Minos immediately understood. He said, okay, let's get over with it. Hand over the laws. Now, the king realized that he would lose the architect out of his hands so easily. And he said, yeah, well, you must be very tired after such a long journey. Yes, yes, of course I will hand you Daedalus, but you should rest first. Take a bath, let's eat, rest, and for dessert, I will hand Daedalus to you. And King Minos was indeed tired from the journey, so he conceded. But when he went inside the bath and the daughters of the king of Sicily came to pour water in it, the water was boiled. And there King Minos left his last breath. In the meantime, he had sent his soldiers and they had destroyed the Cretan ships. So there was a small department of army there which could not do much, even though they suspected that their king had been murdered. They presented the body of King Minos and told them that he had slipped in the bathroom and hit his head, and that's how he ended up. So they buried him with great honors, of course, and they all remained there. Daedalus did too, until the end of his days. And that's the whole story.
Great. Thank you very much, Despina. That's lovely. Thank you very much. And as always, your English, I always amazes me how people tell stories in a second and third language, and your English is just nearly perfect.
Thank you very much.
Nearly perfect. Nearly as perfect sounds like me. Okay.
Great. Thank you for the compliment. Thank you.
So everybody else is nearly perfect. Okay. So I'm getting various messages from various people, some saying they do want to tell a story, some saying they don't want to tell a story. I've picked up all those, and that's fine. John, as there's a few people around, I'll put you and me on at the very end. If we've got time, we'll put us both on. If we haven't, we won't. Okay. So I'm going to Keith next, and then to Shane. Okay. So
Yes,
Keith,
hello everybody.
Link and Shirk.
Yeah, I've got a story here that I'm sure you've all know and all have probably told at some stage. It's one of the Jack stories. I just felt to start off the new year with something fairly simple. So Jack had left school, and his mother on Monday morning sent him off to work, and sent him off to work to a carpenter. And he worked in the carpenter's shop, helping to saw up some of the wood and to make the planks and to polish some of the tables and chairs. At the end of the day, he was brushing up some of the sawdust and putting the corner there ready to be disposed of and burnt later. Now, the carpenter was so pleased with Jack that he gave him a whole penny. Now, Jack, tossing the coin in the air, he skipped all the way home, tossing the coin, so pleased with himself. But in those days, a coin was worth a lot of money, having been a wage for a day. He skipped along, and during his journey home, he had to cross a plank over a stream. And as he was tossing the coin, his hands didn't catch the coin and it slipped into the water. And so he paddled about in the stream, in the water, trying to catch it and find the coin, but he couldn't find it anywhere. And he got all wet and muddy. And he went home and told his mother what had happened. And his mother said, "Jack, you silly, silly boy, you should have put it in your pocket." Now, on Tuesday morning, Jack's mother sent him off to work for a farmer. And he worked for the farmer, helping to feed the pigs and clean out some of the pigs. And they taught him how to milk the cow. And then the day he had to scrape up a lot of the muck into the corner of the yard and ready to be disposed of and spread on the land on another day. Now, the farmer was so pleased with Jack that he gave him a jug of milk. Now, Jack remembered what his mother said. And he had a long coat with a big pocket inside of it. And he carefully placed a jug of milk in the pocket, a kind of a poacher's pocket. And he walked along not very far, and the milk spilled out all over inside his coat and down his leg. And it was a complete mess. And by the time he'd got home, he was in a mess. And Jack's mother said, "Jack, you silly, silly boy. You should have put it on your head to carry it home like they do in India." Now, on Wednesday morning, Jack's mother sent him off to work for a baker. And there he worked in the baker's shop, helping to bake the bread in the early morning and baking cakes and all kinds of sweet baking cakes and things. And now the baker had one of these old-fashioned bicycles with a little wheel and a big basket over the top of the front of the handlebars. And Jack, he delivered a lot of this bread and these cakes all to the villagers around the village. Now, at the end of the day, the baker was so pleased with Jack that he gave him a pussycat, a tortoiseshell pussycat. Now, Jack remembered what his mother said, and he carefully stroked the cat and he carefully put it on his head. And he started to walk home, but the cat became very frightened and its claws went into Jack's head and drew blood. And then the cat just ran up a tree and Jack couldn't get it back. And Jack went home and told his mother what had happened. His mother said, "Jack, you silly, silly boy. You should have got a piece of string and put it round the cat's neck and led it home." Now, on Thursday morning, Jack's mother sent him off to work for a butcher. And he worked in the butcher's shop. Now, the butcher didn't let him use any of the cleavers and the sharp knives, but he was able to turn the handle in a sausage making machine, made sausages. And the butcher also had one of these bicycles with a big basket on the front, a little wheel. And he took some of the meat and the pork pies and the sausages around to the villages and delivered them. And at the end of the day, the butcher was so pleased with Jack that he gave him a leg of ham. Now, Jack remembered what his mother said. And he took a piece of string and he tied it round the leg of ham and he dragged it all the way home. And of course, by the time he got home, the leg of ham was all with bits of grit and dirt in it. It's absolutely useless and no good for anything. And Jack's mother said, "Jack, you silly, silly boy. You should have put it on your shoulder and carried it home." Now, on Friday morning, Jack's mother sent him off to work for a hostler, somebody that looks after horses and ponies and donkeys. And Jack was taught how to groom some of the horses, and he fed the horses, and he cleaned out a lot of the horses and shoveled the muck to the corner of the yard where it was being spread in the fields later. Now, the hostler was so pleased with Jack that he gave him a donkey. Now, Jack remembers what his mother said. And he struggled and struggled and struggled, and he managed to get the donkey on his shoulders, and he started to walk home. And he was staggering along the path with a donkey on his shoulders, and he had to pass the cottage of a rich man who had a daughter who had never laughed. And the daughter was just so solemn, just not able to laugh at all. And her father said, "If anybody can make my daughter laugh and make her happy, then he can marry my daughter and it will make him part of my business." Now, the girl was in the garden, looking down the lane. And there she saw a donkey riding a man. Ha ha ha! Ha 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 ha! And she laughed and laughed and laughed and was so happy. And her father was so pleased that he said that Jack could marry his daughter and he would make him part of his business. And when Jack went home and told his mother never said that Jack was ever silly again.
Thank you, Keith. Proper English, well, English, Scottish, British, Jack tale. Yeah. Right, so we're going to go to Shane next and then to David Thompson. Are you telling stories tonight, David? Right, so we're going to go Shane and then we're going to go to David.
Mike, Jasnami sent a message through that she's sorted out her internet and asked if she could go after Jane, if that's okay.
No, absolutely.
Shane, I meant, yeah.
Absolutely. I haven't got that message here. Okay.
I send you one.
Right, okay. We'll go to Shane and then Jasmine. Okay. After Jasmine will be David. Okay.
Okay. I love that Jack tale, Keith. It's you kind of know what's coming, but it's still so amusing every time. I just love it. It's just such a great story. Okay. So I want to tell a story that I was working on a lot. Like a lot before the pandemic hit, and I told it I think twice, and then the pandemic hit back in whatever year it was, because I've lost track of what year was whatever, and I want to start telling it again, so I thought I'd start telling it here actually. So it involves a soldier who, you know, fought in a war long ago. Maybe it was the 100-year War or the 200-year War, but it was a war from long ago. And he'd had a torrid time. He was a good soldier, deadly with a rifle. But the war came to an end, as wars do. Well, in theory they do. And he was decommissioned with a week's money and his rifle. It was a time when you could take your rifle home with you. That's how long ago it was. And he went home. Well, unbeknown to him, while he'd been out in the field fighting, killing, both his parents had died. So he went to his brothers. He had two brothers. He went to each of their houses and they took one look at him, saw what he'd become, and closed their doors on him and said, "We don't want you here." So he had nothing except for a week's money in his pocket and a rifle. And all those memories, and he didn't know what to do with himself. And then he thought, well, there's one place that I go to when I need to think, when I was a young man. And that's where he went. He went up this hill, up to a place where once there'd been a hill fort, you know, mounded earth, wooden palisade around it. Well, all of that had gone away, rotted away, and all there were now was just beech trees all the way around this kind of almost a circle of this mound. And he sat himself down there. It was the evening, and he found himself, his mind just started to go, and it went back to the battlefield. And he could hear gunshots and cannon fire. He could hear horses screaming, terrified. He could hear men calling out for their mummies. And this was just going around in his brain. And then he was aware of a presence. And he came out of that place that his head was in, and he looked, and there was a distinguished man standing, looking over him, dressed in beautiful green velvet. And the man said to him, "You look in a bad way." And the soldier said, "Well, I am. I've got virtually no money, no family. I don't know what to do with myself." "I might have the answer," said this man. "I'll do you a deal." "What kind of a deal?" said the soldier. "This jacket of mine, this fine jacket, you can have it. There's a pocket full of money. And let me tell you, the money will never run out. But before you can have it, you have to prove that you're a man." Well, the soldier got up and said, "Well, of course I'm a man. I'm not afraid of anything." "We'll see," said the man. And the man just clicked his fingers, and from behind this soldier he could hear a crashing through the wood, and out came a black bear running at him. And he just took his rifle off very calmly, and he just waited, and he just as the bear was upon him, shot him right between the eyes, and the bear fell at his feet. "My, you've got a nerve," said the man to the soldier. "Indeed, you're not a coward." Well, the soldier looked this man up and down, and he went down, and he went down, and he went down, and he could see on one foot he had fine calf leather boot, and on the other was a cloven hoof. He knew he was talking to the devil. He knew he was making a deal with the devil. The soldier said to him, "So what's the deal then?" This is the deal," he said. And he got down and he skinned that bear in front of him, scraped off all that flesh and all that fat. He said, "This is your cloak." He said, "You're to wear this cloak around your shoulders." And he put it around the soldier's shoulders. "For 7 years, you have to wear this. You can only sleep in this, no other bed. And not only that, you're not to cut your hair, you're not to cut your beard, you're not to wash, you're not to cut your nails for 7 years. If you can last that long, you'll be a free man. If you can't, I will have your soul." Well, the soldier was in a place where he just agreed to the deal. What else could he do? What else did he want to do? He had no idea. He just said, "I'll do the deal with you." And so it was. And the devil was gone. Well, the soldier with that bear skin around his shoulders went into the town. Well, within a week, he'd spent his wages on gambling, alcohol, and probably women. And then he put his hand in his pocket, and sure enough, there was gold in this pocket. And he went to another bar, and he drank, and he gambled, and what have we. And this went on for several weeks, and the pocket never emptied. If he saw someone homeless or in poverty, he would pass a coin to them and give them a coin, and they would say a little prayer for him because they could see the state of him. Well, this went on for a year, 2 years. Well, after a couple of years, you can imagine what this man looked like. The bear skin itself was matted and greasy and dirty and had lice running through it. His hair was greasy and matted, and his beard was the same, and his nails grew long and they were like claws. Children began to tease him. People walked away from him. People confronted him. He would roar at them, growl at them. Before long, no one really wanted anything to do with him. And on this went, weeks and months. 4 years in he was, 4 years in. Everyone turned their back on him, unless he had gold to give them, and then they might give him something. Well, he tried to get into an inn one night. He was hungry, he hadn't eaten for several days, and he needed to drink. And the innkeeper saw him coming, and he stopped him in the doorway and said, "You're not coming in here." "But I have money. I'm hungry and I'm thirsty." And he showed him some gold coins. And the innkeeper said, "Across the yard there's a barn. Go in there, I'll bring your food and your beer over." And that's what he did. He made himself at home on some straw, and the innkeeper brought a meal over and a keg of beer for him and a glass to drink from. And there he sat, eating his food, drinking his beer. And then the memory of the battlefield just came back to him, and there he was in a stupor, not drunk, a stupor of memory. And there again, once he was on that battlefield, laying in the mud, running with blood, horses screaming, men calling out for their mother. And once again, he just came out of it. He heard a man crying. And he thought, where is that? And then he saw a door in the wall. There was a wooden door, and he realised it was coming from this room, the other side of the barn. So he opened the door, and there was an old man sat on his haunches, just sobbing into his hands. And the soldier went up to him. Well, I know he was known as Bearskin. This Bearskin went up to him. And he said, "What's your problem? What's your troubles?" And the old man got up and he went to call out, and Bearskin said, please don't scream. I won't harm you. I won't harm you. What's your problem? What ails you? And the old man said, "I can't earn any money. I'm too old. I have 3 young daughters. They're of an age where they could be married. I can't find a suitor for them. We live in poverty and I can't afford to pay the rent, and the landlord is going to throw us out on the street next week. And can you imagine being on the street with 3 young daughters? I know what will happen. And Bearskin, he put his hand in his pocket and he took out a handful of coins, gold coins, and he said, take these. And he gave the man the coins, and the man couldn't believe. He said, this will pay my rent for a year or more, and we'll be able to eat, and more than that even. Take it, he said, with my blessing, take it. The old man looked at Bearskin and said, come back to my house. Let me make you a meal and give you a drink. Come back to my house. You can have a wash. So Bearskin joined him. They went back to the old man's house. And they went in, and there was 3 daughters there, and the oldest 2, when they saw what their father had brought in, Father, what have you brought home? It's disgusting. He stinks. Look at him. He's like an animal. Why have you brought him home? And they took themselves upstairs to get away from Bearskin. And the youngest daughter, well, she knew if her father had brought someone like this home, there would be a good reason. Make him a cup of tea, daughter, he said. And she made a cup of tea and cut a big slice of cake, put it down in front of him. Father had to go off in the back room to do something or other, and the 2 of them just sat there, Bearskin and this young woman. And he began to tell her about his situation, and she couldn't quite believe it. And he said, 4 years I've been tramping and walking. I have another 3 years. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. And they were just chatting away, and the young woman, well, she was quite shy, but for a moment she just looked him in the eye. And she saw something that most other people didn't see. And she knew it was something good in his eyes. And she looked at him and she said, I will wait for you. I will wait for you. It's 3 years, he said. I will wait for you. Bearskin, he had a ring on his finger. He took that ring off and he cut it in half, and he gave her half of the ring. And he said, you will know it's me if it is me, because I will give you the other half. And with that, he bid his farewell, and off he went to carry on with his tramping. Well, the 2 sisters came down and they heard what she planned to do, that she was going to marry this young man, hopefully, and they said, but he's a beast. He'll claw you to death. He'll be like an animal to live with. And they teased her and baited her and teased her, but she took no notice. She dressed herself in black. She walked around and she didn't meet the eye of anyone. She was always looking down. She had given herself to this young man, effectively, this soldier, this Bearskin. Well, he carried on, but, you know, he was becoming tired, worn out, lost. So he started spending less time in the towns and cities and more time in the woodlands. He would sleep in the woods on his bearskin. He would wake up hearing the twittering of birds, the warming sunlight on a beautiful spring summer morning. He would sit there for hours just listening to the birds and watching the badgers and the cubs playing together, and he would see deer come through, and they would come quite close unawares that he was there, and he would observe them foraging. And he spent more and more time in the woods just seeing all this nature about him, and it was the only time that he felt well, that he felt better. And for the next 3 years he continued to spend all his time in the wood, only going into the town for some food. Well, as the years went on, well, a strange thing happened to him. The more he physically looked like a bear, well, inside him he was becoming more of the man that he really was. He was becoming, could I say, more human. He felt more at one with himself. He felt calmer. Things were changing. He had less of those dreams, and by the end of 3 years he was not getting those dreams anymore, those flashbacks. The day of the 7 years came. He left the wood. He went back to that place where that hill fort was, that mound, and he waited for the devil to come. And sure enough, the devil came. Ha! You've beaten me. I didn't think you would. I thought I would have your soul within a few years. You're strong. Well, anyway, I want my jacket back. Ha! Said Bearskin. You want your jacket back? Well, this is the deal. To get your jacket back, you are to wash my hair and my beard, and trim my hair and my beard, trim my nails, and then you'll get your jacket back. So the devil washed Bearskin's hair and his beard, and he trimmed him, and he cut his nails until he was once again presentable. And then and only then did he give him the jacket back. The skin was just left on the ground there, and the devil was just gone once again. Well, the young man took himself back to the town where he'd met that young woman and that old man. Before he went there, he went into a shop, bought himself a new set of clothes. He'd put some money to one side, bought himself a set of clothes, and he took himself to the house, and he soon realised that they still lived there. He knocked on the door, and the old man came and opened the door and had no idea who it was, but he could see in front of him a smart, intelligent man, a kind man, he could tell. And he thought, oh, he might make a good suitor for one of my daughters, surely. And he invited, come in, he said, how can I help you? Sit down. Daughter, make this man a cup of tea. Well, the oldest two daughters, they saw this young man, handsome, strong. He looked rich, he looked intelligent. They thought, oh, and they started to fawn over him, but he took no notice. They went upstairs to, can I say, powder their noses? But they went to present themselves even more, put on their finest jewellery and what have we. And the youngest daughter, she made a cup of tea and she put it on the table, and she didn't look in his eyes. But she sat down with him and they got chatting. And he took out half a ring and he slid it across the table. And then she looked up and she looked him straight in the eyes. And she said, it's you. And she took off from her neck the other half of the ring, and they matched. She said, it's you, it's you. Well, this is a fairy story. They were married very soon. Of course, they had a lovely family, but it's not quite the end of this story. Several years in, things were going really, really well. There was a knock at their door. And the soldier himself took himself to the door, and he opened the door, and there stood the devil once again. And the soldier looked him square in the eye and said, you won't be seeing me anymore. Don't cross my threshold ever again. And he closed the door on him, and sure enough, he never ever saw the devil again, and he lived a full and happy life with his wife and children. And that's my version of Bearskin.
Thank you very much, Shane.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, because there's so many of us and we had a bit of a slow takeoff, I'm going to go to Jasmine, and then I'm going to have a 5-minute break. I don't normally have a break, but I'm just going to have a bit of a break so everybody can refresh their glasses and go to the loos and everything else. Because we're not, I think we're probably going to go on after 8 o'clock tonight. So I'm going to go to, I saw Jasmine there, I saw you. Are you there? Hello. Hello, Jasmine. Hello.
Hello.
Right. Over to you. Over to India.
Hello everyone. My name is Jasmine and I'm from India. So in India, Punjab, there's a festival celebrated called Lohri. So it's a harvest festival. So today I'm going to tell you a story associated to the festival. So this is the story of Dula Bhatti, a Punjabi hero and a king too. Dula Bhatti was born with the same time when Prince Salim was born, and Prince Salim was the son of Emperor Akbar. What Dula Bhatti did not know at that time was that his father and grandfather had been killed by the Akbar for protesting against the high taxes that were being applied at that time. Dula Bhatti and Prince Salim grew together, since Dula's mother was called to take care of Prince Salim, and she was the servant of the King Akbar. Once both the boys were big, they were teenagers, Dula and his mother returned home. And that's when he found out how his father had been killed. And now Dula had decided that he would follow footsteps of his father and rebel against all things unfair practiced by Emperor Akbar administration. He even started stealing things like horses and other precious gifts from other empire to distribute them in the poor. So from his deeds, he was well loved by the poor and all the local folk. And he started protecting girls and women from being taken away for royal harem or to be kept in Akbar's palace. Dula would rescue those girls and get them married to a man who could take care of him or her. So from that day, in one day what happened, a girl was getting married and there was no priest to give a chant. So he made a chant and he started singing it. Now that chant is now a song and it is sung in Lohri celebrations. Dula Bhatti was eventually caught by Akbar army and was sentenced to death by hanging for his rebellion against Akbar. But Dula's compassion for the poor and spirit courage in taking the power he was the most powerful. And so that's why we celebrate Lohri on the day. And now I'm going to share the song that he sung on that day. So that's a famous song we sing when it's Lohri. So this was the chant and a very famous song. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you for coming. And I'm very, very much looking forward to one day. I'm sure we'll meet, whether it's here in the UK or in the Punjab or in Morocco. But I'm sure that you and I are going to meet one day, and I'm really looking forward to it. Right. So I'm going to have a 5-minute break. Just give everybody a chance so you can all unmute yourselves, all have a chat with each other if you like. I'm just going to nip outside because I've got, I lit the outside fire tonight, John. So when we're finished, I'm going to sit there. And so I'll be back in about 5 minutes time. So, and then we'll carry on. Everybody will get a chance to do something if they want to. And I don't mind sitting here till 3:30 in the morning to make sure everybody gets on. So don't worry. If you haven't had a go, there'll be plenty of time for everybody to have a go. See you all.
It'll be 4:30 for Ali.
Well, Ali it's always been very good. I'm sure he will be there. So that's great. Okay, I'll see you all.
A cousin in Texas.
What?
I guess we're the early birds.
I guess we are too. It's like it's 1:05 here in Texas, PM, afternoon.
2:05 p.m. here in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, we have a bunch of sunshine and wind, and not much wind, but it's really nice.
Well, D.C. always has a lot of wind because Congress is here.
Yeah, because of Congress, right. Yeah.
So, yeah, and
bunch of blowhards.
And you know what gets me is that D.C. has one of the most acidic rains in the country. And acid rains are usually associated with manufacturing. I think all that strange air coming from the Capitol building is responsible for our bad rain.
Well, you can always measure it in excremental versions.
Oh, yes. Oh, crap. It was great.
David, you should have been part of the Marin's Kaylee. We did nothing but fart stories for 2 hours.
Oh, I couldn't make it today. I couldn't make it today.
Oh, wow. Fart stories reminds me of when I mentored teenage and tween age boys.
Have you ever heard of the famous French entertainer Le Farteur?
Le Pétomé.
Le Pétomé, yes, right. He could actually play a clarinet.
Oh. Did not need that image.
Yes, you did. You know you did.
No, I did not.
He was the butt of many jokes.
Yes, he was.
Oh.
You guys are in rear form today.
Rear form, yes.
Yes.
I came here tonight expecting highbrow entertainment. What's going on?
You're here.
Oh, you never know.
that's
Anyways, when
what
he
happened.
retired, Pétomé put out, says, "You have seen the end."
Ooh.
That was rather cheeky of him.
Hey guys, remember Jasmine May is still with us.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Oops. Good to see you, Baden.
Oh, did he pay you to say that?
Yes, he did.
Oh, I know.
He often pays me to say nice things about him. It's the only reason I say nice things.
You guys
I have
paid
to
well.
rummage through the private messages, but I know why you said that.
Yes.
You got it right.
I told BB about our drinking of the rum that night at Cambridge Folk Festival, Baden.
I know not.
Yeah.
You know that from what he
was I
speaks.
there?
Yeah, but
I think you were there for some of it, John. I'm sure you were, actually. I think you had to go off and do something, but you were there for some of it for sure.
I don't think either John or I were there.
Of what you can remember.
If there was ginger ale involved, Baden was there because Baden's taught me many things, many stories, but the best bit of Baden was how if you put a little ginger ale with rum, it takes off that molasses taste.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Cool.
And
I don't know what kind of rum you guys are drinking. My rum has undernotes of vanilla.
Ooh.
My rum is also so expensive I can only drink it when someone gifts me that rum.
It's the same with good Scotch whiskey, single malt. If you just put a little bit of water in it, it changes it, and I think it makes it a better drink, but just a little bit.
Okay, I'm not a whiskey person.
Okay.
I tried. Let me tell the story real quick before I 5 minutes up. So I used to go to this restaurant. It's kind of a mid-level restaurant, and I knew the owner and I knew the manager, and I usually finish off a good meal with an Irish coffee. Okay, so one evening they served me Irish coffee, and I frowned. He said, "Mr. C, does not look like happy." I said, "There's something wrong. The coffee is off." So they brought me another one. It was wrong. The third cup in, I said, "No." They said, "I don't know what else to do. We brewed a fresh pot of coffee. We opened a fresh bottle of whiskey." And I said, "Whiskey? I don't like whiskey." He said, "But Mr. C, you always order. That's when we know you've enjoyed your meal because you order an Irish coffee at the end of the meal." I said, "Well, then maybe the bartender has not been putting whiskey in my drink, but I can't." So they said, "I tell you what, we'll make you a Jamaican coffee." And with Jamaican coffee, they put Kahlua and Baileys in it. And I'm going to tell you, they were Jamaican me happy that evening.
Just Jamaican you happy.
Yes. But anyhow,
I'm gonna call you all back. We're gonna get started again.
I got that just under the wire.
So I'm going to go to David Thompson next, and just so you all sort of know that you're in a cultured company here in the England and in the UK. Everybody knows in Shropshire Bay that if you open a bottle of rum up, it goes off after 2 days, so you've got to drink it. It's a bit like milk.
That's right. You
all know
that. You crush the cork, throw it away, and Everybody knows what happens.
You take the top of a bottle of whiskey, throw it over your left shoulder. That's right.
That's it.
What, the bottle or the top?
Or the person sitting in front of you.
We do that at Halsey a lot. So David, I'm coming to you. From David, I'm going to go to Baba. Now, Baden, while you were there for a second, you telling a story tonight?
I've got a small one that I might share. Yeah.
Brilliant. That's great. Okay. And then Ellen and then Diana. Okay. So
Mike, who am I after?
right. So we're going to go David, Baba. Okay.
Okay.
David's first and then you, Baba. Okay.
All right.
David Thompson. There you go. Then I can see you.
Okay, you ready?
Okay. Yeah.
All right. The story I'm going to tell you is from the Aztec Empire. I've been doing a lot of reading into the Mesoamerican stories, and this one is beautiful. So many people will think of Aztec, they think of the ripping out of the hearts and the throwing of the dead bodies, and however, they have some of the most absolutely beautiful stories. And this is one. I will open up in the language of the Aztec. Ma, kuwali ualaka nik no sasanit. Ah, nini taka, nini nana. Welcome to my story, brothers and sisters. This is the plumed serpent and the morning star. Quetzalcoatl, the plumed serpent, when he appeared on earth, gathered his people together and he taught them. Oh, he taught them writing. He taught them gold and silver working, feather weaving. He gave them the calendar to mark the days in divination. He gave to them healing. Quetzalcoatl, plumed serpent, high priest and king of his people, built the great city of Tula, the city of the sun. And there he sat in his palace, the palace of the four walls. East was gold and shining. West was green with jade and turquoise. South was silver and gray with pearls. And north was red with shells and bloodstones. And beneath the palace, beneath the city, flowed the river. And at midnight, Quetzalcoatl, plumed serpent, high king and priest of his people, would go down and bathe, and it became known as the water of precious delights. He was sitting in his palace of the four walls one day, Quetzalcoatl, plumed serpent, king and high priest of his people, when his foe arrived. Tezcatlipoca, or the smoking mirror, the mirror that showed the truth in the future. Where Quetzalcoatl was benign, Tezcatlipoca was chaotic. Where Quetzalcoatl was peaceful, Tezcatlipoca sowed war and woe. Tezcatlipoca of the smoking mirror appeared at the doorway to the palace of the four walls and said to the gatekeeper, "Send me the bird king so I may show him his flesh." The guard went and spoke to his king, Quetzalcoatl, high priest and king of his people. Quetzalcoatl, high priest and lord and feathered serpent, came and said, "What do you mean showing my flesh?" Tezcatlipoca opened the smoking mirror of obsidian and said, "Look and see who you are." Quetzalcoatl, plumed serpent, high priest and king of his people, looked, and there he saw an old man with sunken cheeks and crevices of wrinkles, rheumy eyes, and a long, gray, shaggy beard. He was horrified. "I cannot show myself to the people this way, for they will be terrified." Oh, Tezcatlipoca of the smoking mirror said, "No, don't worry. Here, take this." "Oh, I cannot, for I am drunk." "No, take this here." And he handed a vessel of the pulque, the fermented sap of the maguey. He said, no, here, take your fingertip, taste it, just taste it." Quetzalcoatl, plumed serpent, high priest and king of his people, took his finger and dipped it in took it to his lips and grabbed the vessel and drank it in one gulp. And there he saw great mystical visions. There he saw futures. There he saw so many mysteries. He called to his sister, Quetzalcoatl, who came from the mountain, and he shared it with her, and she too saw the visions. She too saw the mystical versions. But they forgot their divinations. They forgot their meditations, and together they took pleasure. The next day, when Quetzalcoatl, Plume Serpent, high priest and king of his people, awoke, he was horrified by what had happened. He was ashamed, and he sent his sister back. He called to his friends. He called to his servants and said, I have shamed myself. I have shamed you. Dig a great pit so I may go down and meditate upon what I have done. And they did so. After 4 days, Quetzalcoatl, Plume Serpent, high priest and king of his people, came out and said, I must leave. I must go east to Tlapalan, the land of the red daylight from whence I came. And therefore, he burned his palace in the 4 walls. He took his treasures of jewels and gold and buried them in the mountains and the crevices. He turned his cacao tree, his chocolate trees into mesquite bushes. And he turned to his people and said, look for me in the east. Look for me in the east, for one day I shall return. And there, gathering his flutists, his dancers, and his servants, off they walked towards the east, towards the Tlapalan, the land of the red daylight. And they came to rest. Quetzalcoatl, Plume Serpent, no longer high priest or king of his people, sat and leaned against an old tree that was gnarled and bent, much and like Quetzalcoatl was. And he rested. And that became known as Huehuecoatitlan, the tree of old age. They arose and walked again, the flute players, the dancers, and the servants. And they continued walking, and they sat again. And Quetzalcoatl, Plume Serpent, sat on a great stone, and looking back at his city and his people, he began to weep. And as he wept, the tears went down through the crevices, went down and etched the rock upon which he sat, etched the stones around, and his hands and his body became an imprint. And that became known as Temakpoko, mark of the hands. They arose again to continue walking towards Tlapalan, the land of the red daylight. And they came to an area where the evil gods of another people, the enemies of his people, said, stop, give us what you know. Teach us how to feather weave. Teach us how to do gold and silver work. Teach us how to write. Quetzalcoatl, Plume Serpent, gave them to him, for he had no need for them anymore. And it was as though burdens had lifted from him. It was as though he had sloughed off like the skin of a dead snake. And he took the gold and jewels collar and he flung it into a stream where it became known as Cocaapa, the water of precious stones. They've continued walking to Tlapalan, the land of the red daylight, and were stopped by a shaman, were stopped by an evil sorcerer who forced Quetzalcoatl, the Plume Serpent, to drink more pulque, which knocked him down into a great sleep, undisturbed, impossible to awake. And when he awoke, all was quiet, all was silent. And that became known as Coctan, the city of sleepers. And they continued east, walking east. The flute players, the dancers, the servants, and Quetzalcoatl, Plume Serpent, no longer high priest and king of his people. And as they walked, they came between two mountains, one a volcano and one a snow. And the snow fell and smelled, and the fire of the mountain, the volcano came down, and the snow in the volcano. So all except Quetzalcoatl were dead. When Quetzalcoatl, Plume Serpent, saw this, he let out a cry, and he let out a song of mourning which sounded like a desolate bird. And soon, by himself, he came to the mountain of rainbows, for on the other side was the sea. And he crossed over, and he went to the sea, to the shore, and he caused great serpents to come and to weave themselves into a raft. And they hissed and bowed to Quetzalcoatl, the plumed serpent. And upon this raft, he traveled and traveled and traveled across the sea. And they came to the shore of Talapalan, the land of the red daylight. Quetzalcoatl, plumed serpent, alone, stood on the shore, and he bade the serpents to leave, and they hissed and bowed in honor to him. And upon that shore, Quetzalcoatl, plumed serpent, no longer high king or priest of his people, built a great pyre of wood. He laid down on it and lit it to burn himself to ashes. But that heart of his, that great heart of his, kept beating faster and stronger, and it burst forth from his body and rose to the sky, guided by the beautiful Quetzal birds, the jeweled birds, where it became Venus, the morning star, she who leads the sun from his hidden chamber. And some say he did not die, but he is sleeping. And so this once and future king will come again someday, one day. Tlazokomati. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. That's a lovely story, well told. Right, so we go to Baba next, and then to Ellen. Now, Ellen Shapir. Oh, here we go. Ellen from New York. Where are you?
I'm just listening. Next time I'll tell a story.
Absolutely. If we don't, I'd love for you to tell a story. If you don't come in a fortnight's time, I want a sick note.
Okay.
My apologies if you could hear my drumming in the background. My system turned on its mic on its own accord.
Oh.
So my apologies if you got background noise from me.
Yeah, just as a reminder to everybody to try and keep muted while people are telling the stories. Okay,
Yeah,
so we'll go to you, Baba.
Okay,
Go to you,
first
Baba.
of all, David, every time I listen to you tell a story, I'm tempted to move to Texas. Not going to happen, but I'm tempted. And I want to learn more of the stories from that part of the United States and also Central and South America. So thank you for that very much.
You're welcome.
And initially I was going to tell an Anansi story that involved two of his sons, Kwaku Anansi, meaning Father Anansi, and his sons, Baden Anansi and Shane Anansi, but I decided not to. I'm going to tell another story instead. And this story, is a positive story to help us with the new year. And this is one of my favorite stories. It is an Anansi. It's not an Anansi story. This is a story about Brother Ant. Not Brother Uncle, Brother Ant. So, you see, a long time ago, Brother Ant was minding his business. He just walking, minding his business. And he was hungry. and Brother Ant came across a crumb. It was a huge crumb. He said, "Wow, what a huge crumb!" And he went to push it, but it would not move. He pushed and pushed and pushed, but it would not move. I'm an interactive storyteller, so when I say he pushed and pushed and pushed, but you have to unmute and go, it would not move. He pushed and pushed and pushed, but
it would not
Would not
move.
move.
all right. And he pulled and pulled and pulled, but
It
Would
would not
not
move.
move.
oh, he was getting very frustrated because he wanted to take this great big crumb back to his Kijiji, his village, so they could partake and share of his crumb. Now I know what a lot of you are thinking. A crumb is a small thing. No, small thing to you. But the crumb was a huge thing to the aunt. And so the aunt kept pushing and pushing and pulling and pulling and pushing and pushing and pulling and pulling. But that crumb would not move. Off in the distance he saw his bestest friend in the whole wide world, Brother Grasshopper. He said, "Jumbo, Brother Grasshopper." Grasshopper said, "See Jumbo, Brother Aunt." And the ant said, "You see this great, huge crumb? It's so big and delicious because I had a taste. I want to take it back to my Kijiji and share. Would you help me move this crumb?" Brother Grasshopper looked at his best friend like he had lost his mind. He said, "Hey, they call I grasshopper, 'cause I hop through tall grass. They no call I crumb pusher. You want me to push a crumb? Sorry, my brother, my friend, you short." And with that, Brother Grasshopper hopped off into the tall grass. Oh, now Brother Ant was angry because the Grasshopper was his best friend and refused to help him. So he pushed and pushed and pushed, but the crumb would not
Move.
Move.
He pulled and pulled and pulled, but the crumb would not
Not
Move.
move.
And he pushed and he pulled and he pushed and he pulled, but that crumb wasn't going anywhere. And then he heard the sound. Ah, ah. Actually, that was not the sound. I don't know how to sound like an eagle. But anyhow, a huge, beautiful eagle perched on a branch not far above Brother Aunt. And she looked to the left. She looked to the right. And she just looked. And Brother Aunt said, "Hello, Sister Eagle, go, go, go." She was way up in the tree. And she looked. She said, "Who is calling my name?" "Down here, it is me, Brother Aunt." She said, "Oh, hello, little man. I did not see you. What are you doing?" He said, "You see this great big crumb? It's so big and delicious, I want to take it back to my Kijiji. That's my village. I want to take it back and share it with the other aunts and uncles. But it's too big for me to move by myself. Would you help me, please?" She gave him a look like he had just asked her to do something totally unmentionable. And she says, "I am Queen of the Skies. I go where I want, when I want. I hunt what I want, when I want. I eat and do as I please. And you want me, Queen of the Skies, to help you push a little crumb? My good man, you have lost your mind. You're insane. You go away." And you know what? I'll do one better. I'll go away. And with that, she flew away in the sky. Oh, Brother Ant was really mad now. He was furious. So he went to push the crumb. He pushed and pushed and pushed, but it would not.
Move.
He pulled and pulled and pulled and pulled, but it would not.
Move.
He pushed, he pulled, he pushed, he pulled. He was getting very angry. Ah, you know what? This is not an Anansi story, but he is in it. And Anansi spun a little web and came all the way down out of the tree where he was resting. He looked at Brother Ant. He says, "What is your problem? Have you no respect? I was up in the tree taking a nap. I was up all night long sleeping. I woke up this morning tired from sleeping, so I took a nap to recover from sleeping. When I woke up from my nap from sleeping, I had to take a nap to recover from the nap that I'd taken because I was sleeping. And now I'm taking a nap to recover from the nap that I had to take a nap to recover from the Sleeping, and you're down here making all this noise about this great big crumb that's so big and delicious. Any fool can see it's big. But I only have your words delicious. And with that, Anansi helped himself to a piece of crumb. Mmm. Oh. Ah. Indeed, that is a delicious, great big crumb. But don't ask me to help you move it. I've done my part. I ate some of the crumb. Now your load is lighter. Go away so I can go back up in my tree and take a nap to recover from the nap that I was using to recover from the nap that I was using to recover from the nap that I was using to recover from sleeping all night long. And with that, Anansi went back up in the tree. Oh, now, brother Ant was furious. I mean, if he could have, there would have been steam coming out of his head. He was furious. How dare this lazy spider tell him he was helping him by eating some of the crumb. He got so mad, he went to push the crumb, and it moved. He went to push the crumb, and it moved. You know your part. He went to push the crumb, and
it moved.
Thank you. Whew, I thought I was going to do this myself. And he pushed and pushed. He was a pushy little ant. He pushed until he got the crumb back to the village. When the people in the village saw the crumb, they went, ooh, ah. Everybody do that. Ooh, ah.
Ah.
Ooh, ah.
And everybody say, what a great big.
Ooh, or ah.
Okay. Some of y'all been in the rum, but that's okay. Or the whiskey. So, they had this great big crumb. They brought the musicians out. And you know what happens when you have food and music together? You get a party. A party is what you go to. A partay is what you are. They partied and partied and partied and partied, and they ate the crumb and they partied, and they ate the crumb and they drank palm juice. You're right, palm juice. And they partied and partied, like the palm juice John Rowe was drinking. And they partied and they partied and they partied until they couldn't party or eat anymore. Yes, Diana, we see you drinking too. Oh, and everybody's getting an act. I see all of you drinking. Let me get an act. Wait a minute, let me have a drink. And when they were exhausted, okay, cousin. And when they could party no more, when they could dance no more, when they could eat no more. I learned how to do that from the tweens I taught. When they could do no more, they sat and they looked at brother Ant and said, Asante Sana, brother Ant. Thank you very much, brother Ant, for you have given us much joy and much food for this night. And I tell this story to give you much joy and much food for the brand new year we have coming in. You see, my last name is Calendar, and I did some research, and 2022 there are no recycled days in this year. They're all brand new, 365 brand new days for us to celebrate and to commemorate and to dedicate ourselves to doing even more than we did last year. But there's another reason I told this story. You see, the ant was pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing against this great big crumb. And he couldn't move it until he got so angry he could. Sometimes in life, we get served more than we think we can handle. It might be too big of a task, or too much homework, or too big of a chore. But we never truly know what we can do until we simply do it. Asante.
Thank you very much, Baba. That's great. That's absolutely, and I love the point at the end of it. I'm just going to remind everybody again to mute because of the joining in part of that. To give, right, so Alan said no, so we're going to you, Diana. Now, when we've finished with Diana, Norman, I see you've come in a bit later. Are you telling one tonight, Norman? You can put a thumb up if you want to, or no.
No, I'm not telling a story. I just came off of a 2-hour session, and I told a couple stories there.
Great. Okay, it was lovely to see you again, and a Happy New Year. If it's not
Happy New Year.
Right. So I'm with Diana, and to Susan from South Africa. I'm assuming you're not telling a story again. You're always very welcome to. You know that. Yeah. Okay, that's brilliant. Okay, well we're getting there now. Okay, Diana, from the Highlands of Scotland, where all the women are beautiful on the inside and from the outside. So Stanley Robinson used to tell me.
And he never told any lies.
No, never one.
Hi, I've got a little tale for you. So this is set quite a long time ago. There is a young prince who is 18 years old, and he lives with his mother and his father, the king and the queen, on a castle on top of a hill. And he's had a happy childhood, but now his father is saying that he's getting older. He only has the one son, and that this one son should be thinking about future responsibility, about being the king of the kingdom, about finding the right partner. Well, Thomas is 18 years old. He's not quite sure if he's ready for the right partner. But of course, he has to listen to his mum and his dad because they are the king and the queen. And they have a discussion, and it's decided that Thomas will go on a journey. And where is he going to go? Well, he's going to travel the world. It's going to be quite a long journey. And who will he meet? He doesn't know, but he has to try and find a true princess. A real princess? Well, what is a real princess? What is a true princess? If I asked all of you, you would all give me different answers. And that's what Thomas thought. But his mum and his dad, the king and the queen, were they determined? Yes, they were. You just will know when it's a true princess. You just will know when it's a real princess. And so Thomas packed his bags and off he went. And he traveled throughout Europe. He went to Spain, he went to France, he went to Italy. He had a wonderful time and he met so many beautiful women. Well, he wasn't sure what he was looking for, so how was he going to find it? And he met all these women and he enjoyed their company and he learned to dance and he tried new food and he had an absolutely ball of a time. And then he went to Africa and he met more people, and they all the women said that they were princesses. But if you met a prince and you were interested in him, if you were female, would you say that you were a princess? A lot of women would, not I, because I'm from the Highlands, and I would not tell a lie, as Stanley Robertson would admit. No, but there are plenty other women in this world who would tell lies in order to curry favor, in order to maybe be one day a queen. But never mind, he traveled all over Africa. He came back to the castle and his mum and his dad were rather disappointed. You mean to say you haven't found a princess? Oh yes, I found people that said they were princesses, but I just wasn't sure if they were real or true. And you said I would know when that happened, and I didn't know. And so I wanted to play it safe because I realized what an important role it would be for them to be then queen once you and Dad stepped down. And so, well, things died down. They got over their disappointment and things fell back into the normal routine. And Thomas, the prince, he learned more from his father about the kingdom in preparation for future years ahead. And, well, he had many tasks to do. He did them. And he did explore a bit as well. But he still never saw anyone that remotely resembled this true or real princess that he was sure to encounter if he listened to his mum, the queen, and his father, the king. So now, having traveled, time had moved on. He was 22 years old now. And his father and his mother were saying, you know, time is moving on. Well, the castle was a lovely castle, and because it stood on the hill, it always stood out. And this particular night, there were many candles, but they were flickering about because outside it was windy And it was raining, to begin with just a little, and then more and more. It was torrential rain, and there was thunder, and more thunder, and there was lightning, whoosh. And there was even hailstones, and there was snow as well, and it was so bitterly cold. And there was someone out in it all, this young girl. And she wasn't dressed for it. She had a long, beautiful lilac gown on, and her hair was up, but she was rather bedraggled because of the rain and because of the snow, and she was so cold. And she got to the castle door and she rang the bell. And a servant came down the marble stairs as quickly as his feet would go, and he looked through the peephole. And he saw this bedraggled young woman. Well, she didn't look scary. So he opened the door, and the weather was so bad. It was coming in sheets of rain, snow, hail, everything was bouncing off the marble floor. So he told her to come in and just wait until he summoned the queen. And off he went. She waited there. She was dripping wet. She didn't know what to expect, but she was hoping for refuge. And off he went, the servant, to get the queen. And the queen took her time coming down the stairs. And she noticed this young, beautiful girl. And she went over and she said, "My dear, how can I help you?" And the young girl said, Well, I lost my way. I saw the castle on the hill with the lights, and I was hoping you could give me refuge. And of course, it was such an awful night. But then the girl went on to say, and of course, I am a princess. And the queen, well, the queen was taken aback. Her mind started working overtime. And she started to think, could this be a real princess? Could this be a true princess? Would this be the one that we were looking for? And so she said to her, "Come in, my dear." And she got a towel and she got a blanket and she got some cocoa from the kitchen. And she gave it to her and she sat her down in front of the fire. And then she went back to the kitchen. Meanwhile, Thomas went and he spoke to this young woman while she was trying to regain her composure and while she was trying to keep warm. So she went to the kitchen and there was the cook. Now, the cook wasn't just the cook. The cook was a very good friend of the Queen's. She was a bit more like an advisor as well, because she knew when to keep her mouth shut and she knew when to offer advice. And she was asked for her advice. And she said, now, oh, the Queen said, "What am I going to do, cook? What am I going to do? How am I going to find out if this is a real or a true princess?" And so the cook thought for a while. And then for a bit longer. And then in the end, she went over to the larder, she opened it in, and inside it was 1 or 2 or 3, or maybe more, dried peas. And she took one out and she said, "Now, what you need to do, because this cook was very wise, is you put this pea on the bottom mattress and then you pile them all on top, as many as you like, and then you put eiderdown quilts on top of them, as many as you like. And of course you will have to get a ladder, because this is where the lady will sleep. And if she feels that pea, then she is a true princess. But if she doesn't, then you will know that she is not a true princess." And the Queen was so happy. "Oh, that's a wonderful idea. Why did I not think of that?" And off she went. And she took the woman. Well, the woman needed to have a complete change of clothes, to have a bath. She took her to the bathroom, she showed her everything, and then she showed her the bedroom. Now, when this princess, well, do we know she's a princess yet? Maybe not. In inverted commas, princess, came through. She looked at these mattresses, and she looked at the quilts, and she looked at the huge ladder, and all she wanted to do was roar and laugh. But she didn't, because she was very refined, and she'd been brought up very well, and she'd only just met this queen, and she didn't want to go and mess things up as quickly as all that. And so she said, yes, like it was so normal to go to a bed that had so many mattresses and so many quilts by means of a ladder. And the queen said, we will see you in the morning. So she got up to the top, and my goodness, she had to watch, because when she got to the top of all these quilts and all these eiderdowns, well, it was starting to move about. But then she got used to it. And then she went on her side. But she couldn't get comfy. And so she went on her other side. And she still couldn't get comfortable. So she lay flat on her back. And no, she was still feeling something in her back that was rather annoying. And she pressed against her back to try and relieve the problem. Caused by whatever it was that was in the mattress, she thought. She decided then that maybe she was too far up the mattress. She needed to come down a bit. And then she thought, maybe I need to go back a bit. But whatever she did, she wasn't comfortable. She just felt that there was something there niggling away in the small of her back. And she rolled from one side to the other, and it was a long night, and she was so weary after being out in the storm, and she could have cried big fat tears. But she was a brave woman. And in the morning, she got down the ladder, and she went through to get her breakfast after she was dressed. And the queen saw her, and the cook was there as well, and Thomas. And the queen said, well, how did your night go? Did you have a nice sleep after being out in all that heavy rain, all that storm? I'm sure you must have had a lovely night's sleep. But she said, no, she did not. She said, I wrestled all night. There was something right at the bottom that was making me feel irritated, and no matter how I moved, I couldn't rest properly. I'm so tired. I don't have any appetite. She was pale in the face. And the queen? Well, the queen was trying hard not to disguise her pleasure. And she looked over at Thomas, and they both looked at each other. And Thomas winked, and if I could wink, I would wink at you guys now, but I can't. And that's the end of the story.
Thank you so much, Diana. That's great. Right, so Colin, it's lovely to see you here. Have you had a visit with your friends? Someone popped in.
Yeah, I've only got one friend, Mike, and they happened to call just as I came on the World Storytelling Cafe.
Colin, you're the most popular person in the whole of Ireland. What are you talking about, Black? And there's so we've got a few more minutes. Right, so I've got Baden here, and I've got you, Colin, and we've got about 10 minutes because I know that John Rowe will drop out. So, what do you want to do?
Listen, mate, I'm quite happy just to listen to Baden. Don't worry about me.
Okay.
I will.
Well, I've asked Baden already. So, Baden, have you got a short story you could tell us?
I'm gonna have a go at this one, and actually, this is so. What's the word I'm looking for? No, it's not depend. That's stupend. No. What is that word when something falls into place without you expecting it? Like there's a prayer,
Serendipity.
That's easy for you to say. Yeah. But it's so funny because this is actually a Scottish story And it's not about a princess, but it is about a relationship. And it's the story of Hamish and Heather. And Hamish and Heather had been married for way too long. Way, way, way too long. Those of you who are married will possibly know what I'm talking about. You know, when it goes past the point where it's not just like you're tolerating one another, you're just about getting by, but it's literally, you look at the other person and it's the little things, the way they breathe in and breathe out, and it just drives you absolutely nuts. And unfortunately, this was a bit one-sided because Heather was still in love with Hamish. She'd fallen in love with a handsome, kilt-wearing, bushy-bearded, picture Shane Ibbs in a kilt. Unfortunately, folks, I've seen Shane Ibbs in a kilt. It's not a picture you're easily going to forget. But, you know, for the rest of you, share my nightmare. Picture Shane Ibbs in a kilt. And this is the man that Heather had fallen in love with. Hamish, on the other hand, he lost it a long time ago. And unfortunately for Heather, she had a wealthy relation who passed away and left her a shed. What time is it? No, it's not. It's still early. A shed load of money. A shed load. That's okay, right? And Hamish, not being a particularly nice person, having arrived at that point in the relationship, decided he was going to get his hands on it. And what he did, he actually told her, the devious so-and-so, that he was going to take her on a drive to recreate the joy of their early days of marriage and their honeymoon. So they got in this old jalopy and off they headed. And this is where my weakness when it comes to English geography is going to get shown up. They lived in Milton Keynes. So they headed off up the M1, past Northampton. No, you see, I've gone wrong straight away. Don't you pass Northampton before you get to Milton Keynes? Or is it? Anyway, they went off up the M1 and they went past Northampton, past Leicester, on they went north, past Leeds, past Huddersfield, on past Barnsley. Oh, yeah, I'm sort of wobbling about a bit. And then they went on and on northwards, past Carlisle. I think I'm on safe ground here, border country. Wow. And then on into Scotland, through Bute, towards Glasgow, on the way to Edinburgh. Anyway, so they're in Scotland and they're heading out to the Highlands, the countryside. And of course, Heather's in her element and she's, and Hamish is, and he turns off onto a dirt track and he's heading into the hinterland. That's pretty safe. Nobody knows where that is. So, and then he drives along a forest track, goes over a log and pretends that the car's broken down. And they get out and she says, "Where are we, Hamish?" And he says, "Oh, darling, we just have to walk a little bit further along and we'll be there." And of course, her head is full of romantic visions of them probably spending the night at some country lodge. And, you know, she's recreating the honeymoon in her head. And of course, all he's doing is waiting till he can find a suitably remote spot to do her in. And they're walking along and then he bangs his foot against, of all things, a bottle discarded by some careless drinker, someone who does not respect the countryside. And he picks up the bottle. And inside the bottle, of course, he's not thinking of protecting the countryside. He's thinking, this will make a handy weapon. This will do quite nicely. Inside the bottle is a tiny wee man. And he thinks this is a bit strange. He opens the cork and the little man jumps out. and says, "Thank you. You've saved my life." Now, this is all a bit weird, but Heather is in a state of ecstasy. She's taking anything as normal. And the wee man says, "I will grant you 3 wishes. Now, be careful what you wish for." Hamish doesn't hesitate. First wish, he says, "I wish for a brand new motor vehicle. The king of all vehicles, a Rolls Royce Silver Shadow." Because of course he's thinking about his escape and getting back. Boom! The old jalopy turns into a roller, gleaming in the sun. 2 more wishes, says the wee man. Hamish thinks, well, once she's gone, I'll have her money. Well, of course he can't have too much money. He goes, "I want the boot of that car filled with £100 notes." Boom! Opens the boot of the car, packed to the brim, crisp new £100 notes. "Right," he says, "let's head back." And he puts her in the passenger seat of the car. He gets in the driver's seat and he turns around and he's driving along. And he's just looking for the perfect spot to actually stop, open the door, and get rid of her. He forgets what the wee man told him. Be careful what you wish for. He's so happy driving along, thinking of the fantastic life that lies ahead of him. No Heather, all the birds, all the booze, the clubs, everything. And he starts singing. He's so happy. He starts singing. And Heather's sitting there next to him thinking, I can't remember ever seeing Hamish so happy. And he starts singing, "I wish," I'm not going to sing it. You're going to thank me for that. "I wish I was an apple hanging from a tree." He disappears. And Heather looks and he's gone. And then she sees the empty bottle and she sees the bag that Hamish was carrying and she opens it and she sees the hammer and the axe and the shovel, and the awful truth dawns on her. She walks round to the boot of the car. She opens it. She sees the pile of £100 notes and she realizes what a close escape she's had. And she gets into the driver's seat and she drives back to London without a care in the world, where I'm told to this day, she still lives happily ever after. And by the way, if anybody knows her address or has got a phone number or a Facebook page or an email address, I'm just saying. Yeah? I'm just saying. And that's the story.
Well, Clayton, I don't want to ruin your story, but I have got her address and her email and her Facebook page, and I'm not going to tell you. Right, it's come to 8 o'clock. Now, I know John is very good about these things, so I'm not going to ask him to tell a story tonight. I'm not going to do one, and Colin has stepped down. So we've been here for 2 hours. 2 hours has just gone straight like that. It's just disappeared. And in these cold and weird times we live in, 2 hours just disappearing while I listen to stories. So I couldn't do this without you coming and telling stories here. So thank you very much for coming. Rona, I'm beginning to be a little bit worried about you. Can you hear me? You okay, mate? Right, okay. I just hope there's someone that you've got in your house. If you haven't got anybody, phone me, okay? Right, so I'll be here in a fortnight's time. Thank you for coming from all over the world. I'm looking forward to meeting.
Up and comings?
I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that.
Okay.
I'm waiting for Mike.
Right, so I'm going to hand back over to John and Ali. Thank you very much again, my friend. I know you've been there all this time, and I do thank you, and we never forget you. So, John, over to you. I've had a lovely time, mate. Isn't this wonderful?
It's been a brilliant night. I think a round of applause for everyone.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. And so what we've got coming up, because we never stop at the World Storytelling Cafe, on Tuesday, 4:30 UK time, we have our young international tellers, as we have every week. Yazname, of course, is a leading light of that. And then on Friday, we have Stories for Children from Dave Tong, and which I'm really looking forward to. Well, I look forward to everybody. It's just Dave doesn't get to us very often. And then on Saturday, we have Dave Tong is at 6 o'clock in the evening. On Saturday, we have our 10:30 in the morning, or middle of the night for Baden and the Americans here. Is our Asian and Australasian and anyone else who happens to be up at that time. So that's a sort of connecting the world by stories thing. So we will continue connecting the world by stories. Meanwhile, thank you, Ali, for driving the magic carpet. Thank you, Mike, for hosting tonight, and thank everyone who's told.
Absolutely. We've got our concert, we call it Get a Word Online on Thursday, where we've got some wonderful storytellers and poets. It's just not storytelling, it's poets as well. And we've got some pottery to do and all sorts of things at 8 o'clock on Thursday evening. Tickets are just $5. So come along and join in with that. And I hope to see you all in a fortnight's time.
And Rona, please check in with someone so we know you're okay. All right? You're muted.
You're muted, my friend.
But please check in with someone so we know you're okay.
My kids are all round about me, don't worry, and they'll be getting a wee PS, come and see Mum, see if she needs anything. I'll be absolutely
okay. Well, you're
not in the door.
That Professor Whitty reckons that a good hot toddy helps.
That's exactly what's on the menu. Thank you soon, guys. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye there. Ta-da, ta-da. Bye-bye. I'm going to leave.
Good night, all.
Yeah, see you, Baden. Ta-da.
Yeah, see you soon, Baden.
Take care.
Cheers, buddy.
All right, man.
Baden,
Baba C.
okay.
Baba C.
Yes,
I
sir.
see you.
Yeah,
I see you. I see you.
No, you
I see
Baden,
you.
I see. I'm Baba C. You bad in Prince.
I see you.
You know I love you like a brother.
Man,
What
I love you
don't know is
more.
I don't like my brothers. No, yes I do. Yes I do. Yes I do. Anyhow, I know we gotta let Ali go, but
I love
enjoyed
you
your
like
story.
Cain. I love you like Cain loved Abel.
And I love you. I love you. I love you. Pay no attention to those red dots.
Okay.
All right, we should let Ali go. Thank
On
you,
the
Ali.
30th. Night, Ali. Thanks for everything. Peace.
All right.
Thank you, Baden. Thank you, Baba. Thank you
Baden,
so much.
reach me later on. Oops, he's gone. All right. Take care, Ali.
Take care, my friend.
Until the next time.